Right, so welcome to another match winning blog. This week I've just got 4 matches to talk about. They're all open matches and they're all at Partridge Lakes fishery, so it's going to be a bit of a shorter one this week. There's still plenty to talk about and quite a bit that I found quite interesting. So starting with last Tuesday, which is when I filmed my last week's match winning blog, and I told you I had quite a decent day's fishing. I was on the open match, which was on Covies 5 and 6, and I drew peg 173 on Covey 6, which is a good draw. Ended a spit with the bowl to me right, and I expected to catch quite a few fish there. There's nice conditions on the day. It was nice and warm. The wind was coming down sort of right to left, a westerly wind, nice and strong down the lake, and I felt like there was going to be quite a few fish to be caught. My approach was basically going to be quite a positive approach. I wanted to try and catch a decent weight of fish. I knew that late 5 was going to be quite good and there was going to be some big weights on there. I expected there to be quite, a lot of shallow fishing. So my approach was basically starting the edge while I fed my shallow line up, and then also pop the mud line across in case I needed somewhere to go and catch some carp. Didn't really fancy my mud line, to be honest. The way it plumbs up, it was quite shallow, and it was a bit sort of, one side was shallower than the other and it sort of dropped down. It weren't great, to be fair, so I didn't really fancy to catch there, but I still set it up and I was going to feed a bit of bait there. But then in my right hand edge, which is just on the point, I've got sort of a little reed bed there, and it plumbs up about 2 foot, nice and flat just in front of that, and I fancied to catch there on pellets. Like a couple of weeks before, as you know, on my last blog I was on peg 75 on late 3, and I caught very similar fishing like that, just fishing pellets in the edge. So I fancied to do that to start with. Then I was just going to feed some maggots sort of down the middle to try and catch hopefully quite a few fish there shallow. And basically how my match has gone, I've started in the edge to my right. I've spent probably 50 minutes there just catching an odd fish. I probably had 8 fish, did manage 2 little carp, but sort of 6 F1s and 2 little carp. Nice and steady, just sat there nice and patient catching an odd fish while I fed my shallow line up. And then when I went in shallow, I basically spent most of the day fishing there, catching on a few different rigs, anywhere between sort of 16-inch and 2 foot, just on, sometimes on a little normal fixed rig, sometimes on an overshotted rig when that wind picked up a bit, just to help me keep my line a bit tighter. It just made me hit a few more bites, and just swapping between the two, I was able to keep a steady run of fish coming all day. Really, it was never solid. I've never really bagged up. I've just always caught an odd fish, so it kept me on it most of the match, to be honest. Kept feeding me mud line, was potting some Blake's pole mix ground bait, a few micro pellets across, and I didn't see a lot of fish come in, to be honest, so didn't want to sort of go across there and miss out on a little run of fish down the middle. Because I was catching an odd fish there, I just stuck steady away with that. And as I've ended up with 71 fish, I think I had, which was 138 pounds, so a bit of a smallish stamp for him to average sort of less than £2 on that lake. Normally they do average quite a good size, but I did catch a few of the more stockier F1s. But 70 odd fish, plenty of bites, and a nice day's fishing. So overall on the day, the match was won by Tony Trainer, who was on peg 121 on late 5. That's been a peg that's been quite a good area at the minute, and it's been winning quite a few matches. And it's quite strange really, because the wind has actually been blowing westerly, which would be off that peg's back, and it has done for quite a while, but it still seems to be holding quite a lot of fish. He had 156 pound, mainly shallow, I think. And then second in the match off my lake, peg 146, was Sam Slockett. He's done really well catching a lot of carp in the mud, and like they're a fish that I didn't see many of at all on my peg. So it's very interesting how a couple of different areas of the lake can throw up a completely different stamp of fish. I think he's had about 50 fish all in the mud line, and he's done really well to catch 156 pound and win that lake and come second in the match. And then third was Ian Burley off peg 118 with 148 pounds. So as you can see, the venue fished quite well to catch, to come 5th in the match with 138 pound shows that it fished quite well, and there was a lot of fish starting to have a feed. So that was looking good for the next few matches that we were going into. So that leads me on to the next match, which was on Thursday, which was on Covies 1 to 4, and I actually drew peg 46 on late 2, which can be quite a good peg, to be fair, over the spit again on late 2. But again, the wind was sort of blowing out of my peg, and it was blowing up towards peg 34 up the other end. It was sort of blowing northerly, and I did think I was going to struggle to compete there, to be fair. Peg 34 was also in my section, and the day before, on the Wednesday, it actually won the match on the over 55s match, so I did think that I was going to struggle to win that section, but still thought I'd get some bites there. And knowing what I knew from the other day, where fishing the shallow water wasn't particularly great and everything was down the middle shallow, that was going to be my main approach. I was going to feed plenty of bait down the middle for shallow. Again, I was just going to fish with maggots, and then I was just going to fish in my edge with ground bait and maggots, and in the mud again with ground bait and maggots, and hopefully catch a few fish in there. This lake's quite shallow at the minute. I think the water's down, so a lot of your lines are really shallow. So I only had sort of 13 inch in my left edge, I had sort of 15 inch in my right edge, and then I only had about 10-11 inch in the mud. It was really shallow again, so I think that's why the fish aren't really settling in the shallow water at the minute, because it's quite shallow already and I don't think the fish want to be in there. So as it's turned out, I've literally, first 40 minutes I've spent across in the mud line, caught literally 2 F1s, no more bites, couldn't get any fish coming in my peg. The odd one that did sort of spooked out the peg where it was a shallow. So then I've had to swap to just literally fishing down the middle with maggots, and I had quite a good little period, to be fair. Sort of after 2 hours I was catching nice and steady, fishing shallow. Probably got to sort of, I probably had maybe 50 pound sort of 2 hours in, and I thought, well, if I have a better second half of the match, which you normally do at Partridge, I thought, well, maybe be able to push myself up to a good weight and maybe actually be able to, you know, win the section or even frame in the match. And then, to be fair, the next 2 hours I've literally caught 2 or 3 fish. I don't know what happened. The fish just deserted me on the shallow line. I was sort of having to go back in the mud, down my edges, just nicked literally 3 fish in the next 2 hours, which is really disappointing after the start that I had. I thought that, you know, I was going to have a really good day, but it, you know, it just sort of, they just sort of went on me. And then late on, sort of last half an hour, the fish have come back and I've had another really good run, and I probably caught 15 or so real big F1s just in the last 15 minutes alone. It was amazing how quickly, you know, as soon as they'd gone, they sort of come back just as quick late on, and they were there. It was a shame that I did have that blank period, because if I'd have caught that well all day, I would have had a really good weight. But I think there was just, you know, being the wrong end of the lake, I just think I didn't have the volume of fish in front of me to keep catching all day. So in the end, I've ended up with about 45 fish, which have got 93 pound, which was sort of 3rd on the lake on the day, which wasn't a bad weight on the lake. But Peg 34 won the section with 104 pound, and James Howarth won the lake from Peg 31 with 107 pounds. So just a bit less than, you know, what I needed to get up there to sort of win the section. I just needed one more good run really, but I don't know where I could have had that. Again, my edges weren't very good, my mud weren't very good. Even late on, I fed them and no fish were coming in there. Really strange how them fish just don't want to be on the shallow water, especially with it being nice and warm. In July, you would normally expect the fish to be desperate to get into that shallow water, and it's just not happening at the minute. Really sort of interesting. Overall on the day, the match has been won by Mike Senior from Peg 60 on lake 3. He's had 173 pound, which was a brilliant weight. I think he's caught all his fish shallow on maggots, just down into the bowl. Second in the match was Chris Weeder. He had 150 odd pound from Peg 56. Again, I think he's caught shallow on maggots. And then third in the match was Steve Openshaw from Peg 15 on Covey 1 with 135 pound. I think he's actually caught mainly carp fishing on the aerator, and that's a really good weight on that lake, to be fair, at the minute, as that lake's gone quite tough, and the weights, you know, there's not been many tons coming off that lake, so 135 pound and on that peg was a brilliant result. So, you know, well done to Steve, well done to Mike Senior on the win, and also well done to Chris. So the next match was Saturday's match, which was on Coveys 1 to 4 and Covey 6, and I've drew Peg 92 on Covey 4. Now I was quite happy to be here because there was no wind at all on the day, so there wasn't sort of a particular end of the lake that I thought would be favourable. But what I did have on Covey 4, Peg 92, was a lot of cover. So I've got a big tree across, had a nice weed bed in the edge, and that's what I thought was going to be vital on the day, because it was like 30 degrees, it was red hot, and I thought all the fish would be hugging cover. So my main approach was going to be fishing down the edge to the left, just short of that weed bed, and then also shallow with casters to the tree. And that's pretty much what I did all day. I caught a few down the edge to the left, and then I caught most of my fish fishing shallow to the tree, just on a little overshotted rig, sort of between 8-inch and 16-inch deep, and just pushing it underneath the tree and just loose feeding casters. And I ended up with 75 F1s for £131, which put me second overall in the match. So a great result. And on the day I actually filmed the live match, which is going to be getting posted in the next couple of days, so it's going to be a really good one to check out. It was a real nice day, some really interesting sort of techniques with the shallow fishing with that overshotted rig, pushing it under the tree, that you might find interesting. So check that one out later in the week, it should be a really good one. So overall on the day, as I said, I was second with £131, but on the day Mark Derbyshire actually won the match. He was on peg 67 on lake 3, which isn't a great peg on lake 3 to be fair. Obviously you can see that lake's been fishing quite well, and we knew that from on the Thursday as it had the top 2 in the match. But to be fair, to win the match off peg 67 was a really good performance by Mark. He's at £143. I think he caught mainly shallow down the middle, which was really interesting because, as I say, I expected everything to be near cover, so fishing across to the reeds and stuff like that, if you've got any sort of bushes like I had on my peg. But a few people I did speak to did actually still catch a few shallow down the middle, so that was going to be quite a big lesson to take into the next day, to be fair. And I'm glad I did sort of get that little bit of information off a few people who said that they still did catch a few shallow down the middle. So well done to Mark. And then we'll move on to the next day, which was Sunday's match, and I've drew peg 25 on lake 2, which is a peg that I was on last Saturday. So I'd had a bit of an experience on that peg before, and that last Saturday basically I caught all my fish in the edges, basically fishing with either pellets or ground baited maggots, mainly carp. So knowing that peg, I know that there's normally a few carp there, so in the back of my mind I thought that I was going to go and have a bit of a carpy match in the edges. But then sort of knowing what it was like midweek and what it had been like the day before, shallow fishing had played sort of the main attack in all of what I was fishing, so I had to have that in the back of my mind as well, that I needed to feed a shallow line. So I wasn't sure what to do in terms of my shallow line. I didn't have a lot of cover across. The only cover I have is sort of long to my right towards the point of the island. There's a little bit of a reed bed there, but when I plumbed up there it was only sort of 22-23 inch sort of right against that reed bed, so I didn't actually fancy to catch shallow there. So I decided in the end to actually put my shallow line to my left towards the sort of little boulder is there in the open water, and take a bit of a gamble on whether it'd come good or not. And basically same again, a bit like my matches midweek. I started in the edge, caught one fish, no good, had a look across in the mud, caught 1 or 2 fish, and then no more bites. Nothing was coming in the shallow water at all, and I was a bit worried, to be fair. I thought, oh no, if this shallow line down the middle doesn't work, I think I'm going to really struggle here. But luckily I went in on my shallow line, just fishing down the middle, and I've caught pretty steady all match, to be fair. I've never caught well at all. It was like 1 or 2 fish, and then I had to sort of come off it, rest it, go back in, get a little burst. But I've always been able to go back there and get a few fish, and they were decent stamp F1s, so it was quite good. I've just sort of ticked along all day, fishing anywhere between 12 inch and 16 inch. Again, them fish seem to be quite shallow. If you're going to catch them at the minute, they're going to be right up in the water column. Sort of 16 inch is a real deep rig at the minute what you're catching on. Them fish do want to be quite high. Just loose feeding casters. Again, I fished casters because I'd caught on them the day before, and I've ticked away nicely through the day and ended up with 59 F1s for £117, which won the lake and put me 4th on the match, and they paid 4 on the day in the overall, so I managed to frame again, so I was really happy with that. And a brilliant weekend's fishing at Partridge and a brilliant week's fishing at Partridge. So as I say, on the day I ended up 4th in the match with £117. The match was actually won by Mark Derbyshire again. He actually did the weekend double. He drew peg 56 on lake 3, so again lake 3 had won the match. So like I've said, that's been the dominant lake at the minute. I think one thing that's been important, and the reason that lake's fishing so well, is there's a lot of hide in them lakes, so they're sort of in that lake, so them extra hide what people are catching, they're catching sort of 20-30 pound of hide at least on top of their F1s, and it's really helping build a weight, and I think that's been a really good lake. So Mark had done the double, he'd won both days at the weekend, so that's a massive achievement. The standard of angler's really good here at Partridge, so to have a day, you know, a weekend where you win both matches shows that he's got the method bang on right. And I think both days he's caught shallow down the middle on maggots, and he's done really well, catching 140 odd pound both days. Massive well done to Mark, that's awesome. So I hope everyone's enjoyed this week's match winning blog. Going forward now, I've got a couple of matches this week at Partridge, and then on the weekend I'm actually going to Fishermania to sit behind Kieran Marsden, who's I'm bank running for. He's actually drew peg 8, which is permanent peg 17, which is actually the peg I drew 2 years ago when I was in the Fishermania final, so know a bit about the peg. Hopefully I'll be able to help pass on a bit of information that I learnt from then. And hopefully there'll be a load of fish there on the day for him, and he'll have a really good day and have a good chance of winning it. But you know, if not, there's a lot of good anglers in this final. There's a lot of, you know, decent anglers who've drew, you know, decent areas, so they'll be tough to beat. Like Andy Bennett on peg 4, I think he's got a very good chance of making it 3 in a row. So good luck to everyone who's fishing the final at the weekend. So hope everyone's enjoyed the video. I'll be catching you up probably in about 10 days time after I've been to the Lindome Festival next week. So look out for the live match, which is going live later this week, and I'll see you next time for another match winning blog.